Isabel and Regina, as some of you know, presented at the symposium in Pittsburgh in last November. And going through the evaluations, I saw that this was one of the favorite sessions, that people really loved it and had just a great experience. And even after that, someone told me that I remember what it was. Someone told me that they were planning something for their state library because they had seen Regina and Isabel and how it got them thinking. So I'm so excited that they agreed to do a version here in our webinar and making it available to more people than who get to go to symposium. So with that, I'm going to mute myself. Regina and Isabel, you are on, and if you need anything along the way, people just let me know.
All right, so I'm going to share my slideshow with you guys. Here we go. Awesome. So thanks for everyone that's joining us. If you saw our presentation in Pittsburgh, some of the information might be a little bit repetitive, but we do have updates. So there'll be a lot of new stuff in there as well. So our presentation is called Building Their Own World, Teen-Driven Community Engagement. I am Isabel, and you can find me on Twitter at IZAG.
And I'm Regina, and you can find me on Twitter at Miss Hootie Who.
And we're both just outside of Chicago. I'm at the Oak Lawn Public Library, and Regina is at the Forest Park Public Library, both kind of suburban areas, sort of lower middle class, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, mid-sized libraries. So first I wanted to just kind of go over really quickly just some of the background, the research, the philosophy for what we do, and why it's teen driven. If you're not familiar yet with the future of library services for and with teens, a call to action, it's a report that you can get for free. If you don't know where to find it, I'm sure we can put a link to it in the chat, but you can download the whole PDF, and it's just, this is like my Bible. I was actually really bummed because I couldn't find it today, so I couldn't like refer back to it, but we just picked out a couple things from this report that we wanted to highlight that it will basically just help if you need something to back up why you're making changes in teen services and teen programming for the future with teens. So the first thing we're talking about is connecting with teens as individuals. And this is one of the features in the report, and it's to support their personal independent growth and focus on building relationships. So a lot of what I do in my teen room is actually more of just talking with teens on a regular basis versus trying to get 50 kids in the room and do some sort of program. So it's a lot more one-on-one and finding out what they need and then building programs off of that, instead of me trying to come down from above and say everyone wants a steampunk craft program when that might not be the case. The other feature from the report that we really focus on is embracing our role as facilitator rather than expert. And this is something I feel very strongly about because I feel like I'm not the expert in anything. But if a teen comes up to me and says, hey, Miss Isabel, I really want to do this thing, I'm like, okay, I don't know, but let's figure it out. So this picture that you see here is my teen advisory board building a life-size Quidditch game. That was their service project last year, and I had no idea what I was doing, but we figured it out. And then finally, the last piece from the report that we are kind of focusing on is refocusing beyond traditional roles and traditional measurements of success. And this will sort of touch base with when we go through our different examples, what is success should not be, you know, the highest attendance anymore, or, you know, justifying that I spent X dollars per kid on this program, but really more meaningful measurements of success and like what a student actually gets out of the program versus like how many of them attended. So I don't know, Regina, if you want to say anything about this particular picture too.
Well, this particular picture was kind of a book bites thing. So in the back, you see pizza and everything. It was not a huge turnout. I think we did this for Teen Read Week. And I'm used to having a large number of people for Teen Read Week. And this was one of those situations where it was like, there are only 3 people at the book table, but they're picking up books. So it worked.
Yeah, and the one like line that I had highlighted from the report in this section was, be bold, persistent, and critical. Do not be afraid to experiment. Above all, never lose sight of your goal to change the lives of teens and provide them with a brighter future. So a lot of times my programs have 1 kid show up, but hopefully I am changing something in their life and providing them a brighter future. So that's like the shortest way I could get through our little rationale behind this. I love this report and I'm happy to talk with anybody about it on Twitter. And I have a very academic background, so I tried not to get too into it. But now we're kind of going to go into some of our examples. There's no particular order to this. It's just me and Regina alternating what we're talking about. And yeah, so Regina, go for it.
All right, so this is the Teen Service Club at the Forest Park Public Library. So some background about service opportunities for teens here at the library. We have traditional service, which is shelf reading, but there's only so much shelf reading you can do. Cleaning the toys, that kind of stuff. And what started to bug me was that there was no intrinsic motivation for doing service. It was, I need this for my court appearance, I need this for my junior National Honor Society, or I need this to graduate. But as someone who, when I was younger, service was instilled as something that you should want to do, that you should actively serve the community that you're a part of, it was bugging me that the teens were not feeling a connection to it. They were doing it because it was a requirement. So the service club came about partially because of that, and also because I could not get anyone to join a teen advisory board. And so I thought, why not use this as a way to not only create a way for them to feel strongly about the service they're doing, but also to kind of hear what they're interested in and what they want to do. So I felt like if we want them to think outside of themselves, then we need to start with them and find out what's important to them. So the way that the club is structured, each week, every Tuesday, it's a 1-hour meeting. The time changes based on the interests and needs of the teens who are in the group at the time. I try to throw in different hidden lessons. So basic parliamentary procedure, what is a motion? How do you get your idea across to a group? Interview and career skills. So we talk a little bit about how to, if, for instance, we've had a couple times where our local newspaper has come in to ask about an event that the club is doing. And I make sure that a member of the club handles that interview, not me. I sit there and I help them, but I feel like it's important for them to learn how to advocate for themselves, speak for themselves, talk about what's important to them. We talk about budgeting. Even though, you know, I handle actually going out and buying the stuff, I talk to them about, okay, this is how much this kind of idea that you have would cost. What are some ways that we can scale that down so that we can be most effective? And then I let them have the conversation. So I make sure that in all of our meetings, they know that I am just the advisor. This is your club. It works if you work it, not me. Marketing, they give me input on the flyers. They let me know, change that, Mr. G. Nobody wants to look at that. They tell me that's terrible. That looks like you're trying too hard. And I think that's important. They're a part of that community. They know who we're trying to reach out to. So, and then personal agency. A lot of times I've found that adults don't really think that teens care about much. And this is their way for speaking up about what's important to them. And explaining it to me is the first step before them being able to go out and tell others. So here's some examples. So in the top corner is some of our teen service club members packing up care packages for our local pad shelter. And they were writing little notes that said, we're thinking of you, just little positive encouragement. And in the bottom corner, they had put together a box to collect gloves and it was called their Helping Hands Project. So these were both projects that came from teens. All of the projects that the Service Club does come from an interest that our teens actually have. I try not to lead them in any way. I ask them, what's important to you? What have you been thinking about? And then as the conversation goes on, I just help to kind of guide them towards, well, how could we help people with that? I understand that you're, feeling strongly about it. What are some ways that you'd like to do something about it? Let's see. What else? I wanted to talk a little bit about that self-agency thing again, because recently I had a teen who has been a part of the Service Club for about 2 years now come in, and he needed to provide a certain amount of hours to a counselor. And as I was writing that, because I take attendance every week so that when they do graduate or they need the proof or whatever, I can legally jot down that they did do this time. And as I was writing down his time, he saw that he had more hours than he was even required to have. And he was thanking me, and I told him, this wasn't me, I didn't do this, you did this. And it instantly changed. You could see the light bulb go off in his head that, oh no, I made it a point to be at the library. I made it a point to go to this event. I made it, and he saw and took ownership, and that was amazing to watch happen, because this is someone who previously had not really been engaged in the library. So it was a really special opportunity.
So based off of like Regina's Service Club, which I think is the most awesome thing ever, I tried to switch my teen advisory board to be a service-based learning project teen advisory board. We sort of trial ran it with that Quidditch picture that I showed you guys earlier, and sort of did for the year the old version of Teen Advisory Board, like the once a month meetings to talk about programs and what's in the teen room and blah, blah, blah. And then tried to add in this service project component, and it worked out pretty well. This year, however, not so great. And it all kind of depends on having really good leadership in the club, I think. That's a really important thing, because what we have now is a lot of really passionate kids, but they have like no direction. And I'm watching them do this project, and I want to be like, let me do this for you. But it's their project, so they need to work on it. So it's still a work in progress, but definitely something that is doable if you're finding, like I did, where my teen advisory board was not really like so necessary to create programming and services like that. I could kind of do on my own based on me being in the teen room and having more informal conversations with kids. So they weren't as crucial to what I provide as far as programs and services go, because I was already having these conversations with kids. So, but I didn't want to get rid of the teen advisory board, because kids really do like being on it. And it is a good connection to the schools too, because then you can be like, you're the teen advisory board rep for your school. Like, you need to kind of create this line of communication. So I'll probably continue the service-based learning project, but I might also introduce some more like official roles for the group too, like designate somebody to be like the project leader and designate people to have different roles and functions within the board so that they could have a little bit more accountability, because I think that's kind of what's missing in this service project right now. Not to say that it's a total failure, but it's again, a different way of sort of measuring success. And then also something that we didn't touch upon in the intro philosophy research section, but like flexibility, being able to say like, okay, this didn't work this year, how can we tweak it for the next year, right, Regina?
Yeah, absolutely. Because as much as I had a huge group, as you can see in these pictures, my service club right now varies between 2 and 3 kids. And I'm totally fine with that because they're coming. They make it a point. I even have a couple who will come an hour early to tell me, we'll be back so you can order the food because we're coming back. Because they know that if they don't come consistently, I stop ordering the food. So now now they come an hour early to tell me, we'll be back at 5 o'clock. You can order the pizza, we promise. And I'm fine with that because they have made it a priority. So not a failure. Be flexible, be flexible, be flexible. And we'll talk a little bit also about ways that even the meetings I've found that even when they seem like they're going off on a tangent, it always comes back to something where I'm like, oh, well, that worked. We didn't get anything out of it, but this moment, and that's enough because this will change this team's life. So speaking of unexpected outcomes, so two projects that we did do was Be a Success Story and Teen Pride Week. One of them went great, one of them not so much. So these two pictures are from Be a Success Story. We had talked a little bit. I had a teen who came to Service Club and said, I want to create something that'll go viral. And I was like, okay, why? And so we kind of talked through that idea, and I was trying to just pull, what is it about something going viral? What is it about it? And what we got from that is that they wanted to impact other people's lives, make people think. And so we came around to this idea of Be a Success Story, where we would collect just everyday success stories from people. I'm a success story because I was on time for work today. I'm a success story because, you know, I got an A on my test. And they really took this idea, and I worked with them to have a Be a Success Story day on the lawn of the library. And so that's what these pictures are. We did sidewalk chalk out, and they planned the entire structure of the event. They decided, we'll do sidewalk chalk, we'll collect success stories from people. And my job was to make sure that it happened. So I was to put everything in the calendar, get the supplies for them, make sure that we had the space on the lawn, and make sure that everyone in the library knew what we were doing, and set up a website for them to put up the success stories afterwards. So the picture at the bottom, I love so much because one of the big things I tell people all the time is that service humanizes teens. A lot of people see teens as intimidating. They see teens as they don't care about anything. They're selfish, they're this, they're that. And they don't take the time to get to know them because they're so intimidated by them. These two young ladies were coming into the library to pick up a copy of one of our local magazines because they had been listed in it. And when they saw the teens outside, I was really proud because the teens approached them and were like, hey, share a success story with us. And the ladies were so taken aback that these teenagers were so happy and approachable, and they were coming up and they wanted to know, and they started talking about their story in the Forest Park Post, and the teens were talking about their work in the Service Club. And it was this beautiful moment where you saw these older women relax and see that these teens are interesting and this is a great project, and let me help you with your sidewalk chalk. And it was a beautiful moment to humanize them. And so this is like my favorite picture of all time. And then the other cool thing about it is that these projects become things that stick with them forever. So these are examples of some of the things that they were doing outside. We let people stop and take selfies with us. They could write their success story. And then we also had these little sheets that people could fill out, and we would add it to the Be a Success Story website. And it was really awesome to see the teens think about what makes them a success story, and also look at what made the adults that they were around every day be a success story. It really helped them to connect. One activity that did not go so well was the Teen Pride Week. One of the things that I think is really huge about these activities is that teens also need to learn how to fail. They also have to see that if you don't put the work in, it may not work. So I had a group who saw the success of this event and wanted to have a Pride Week similar, where we would go outside, do the sidewalk chalk again, do a whole big thing. And then as their schedules got busy and they weren't checking in with me, the project started to dwindle down. And so when one of them came to talk to me about it, I explained to him, this is not my club. These are not my projects. If we don't put in the work as a group, it doesn't happen. And he got it. And I felt like even though the event didn't take place, this was still an important lesson for him, that if I'm committed to something, I have to make sure that it happens.
Exactly. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is my current events cafe. And so this kind of is another one of those things that started as a teen idea. And I think one of the things that was really popular at our presentation in Pittsburgh is we talked about being lurkers in the teen room. And this is where this idea came from. That I was talking with some teens who were saying after the terrorist attacks in Europe, they had no outlet to talk about them. And their teachers weren't necessarily talking about them. And if they didn't have a social studies class, then they didn't really have like a teacher to even talk to about it. And so I have a degree in political science, so I felt like this is something I could facilitate, is have a current events cafe once a week, a drop-in thing, and let the teens have some space to talk about whatever they want to talk about from current events. I did offer extra credit. Some of the social studies teachers were kind enough to give their kids extra credit if they came in. So some days I got a pretty good group from that, but most of the times it was just me sitting in the teen room by myself, which is okay because I was in the teen room anyways. But this is one of those programs that if you look on the attendance calendar in Evanston, it's like 00001, 0007, and then zeros all the way down. Like my most meaningful, I have two really meaningful outcomes from this event. And it was one time where my group of like regular rowdy kids that's in the teen room sat down on the couch and looked at me, and I was like, what? And they're like, we're here for Current Events Cafe. And I was like, what? Excuse me? Like, what are you doing here? But that was really good. And they were like calling each other out, like, no, you don't understand. This is important. This affects you too. And I didn't even really have to do anything. It was just a space for them to be here to talk about the current events. And then the other really good, meaningful outcome that I had from this event was a teen who just stopped by accidentally during Current Events Cafe to talk to me, but then I told her about Current Events Cafe and we started talking about the primaries. And she was like, wait, I can vote in the primaries as long as I'm 18 by the election day? And I said, yeah. And she's like, I didn't know this. My teachers never told me this. I'm not required to have a social studies class at my school. So she had no idea prior to that day that she even had like a voice in everything that was going on. And the following week, she came back to me to say, I just went across the street to Village Hall and I registered for the primaries and I even did my early voting. Like, obviously this thing that was zeros all the way down had really meaningful impacts on these handful of occasions. It was zero work on my part aside from reading the headlines in the morning the day before the program and making sure I knew something about what was going on. And then really, again, being that facilitator, not the expert. I didn't have to have all of the answers on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but I could ask the questions to get them thinking about it and get them to like think more critically about what's going on in the world and talk through some of their ideas. Right now, as of this year, I've had zeros all the way down, so I might have to cancel Current Cafe, but it's morphed into something different, which is this photo on the phone. On one of my whiteboards, I have started doing an AMA, like an Ask Me Anything on Reddit. And I pull somebody for the month to be the AMA person. And then the kids write the questions on the whiteboard and the person answers them. So we have actually a pretty big population of Syrian refugees in our area. And so one of the girls is on my teen advisory board and she's amazing and was giving incredibly thoughtful answers to all of these questions. And the questions were really amazingly respectful. And I was just floored by the whole exchange. And then I pull books for that month too on this topic. And so this has actually been way better than Current Events Cafe. So I'm going to kind of like divert my energy from Current Events Cafe to this, which is a little bit more work on my part in finding a person to be the AMA. This month, I have actually a librarian friend of mine who's answering questions about being an autistic person. And I've already got my next 2 months lined up with a student who is transitioning and then a student who came up and said, Miss Isabel, you should have an LGBT month question. And so she volunteered to do that for June during Pride Month. So this was kind of, again, like flexibility, meaningful outcomes, and all of that jazz.
Isabel, we have a question before I go into the teens as trainers. I saw from Haley, how do you get teens' attention to join the programs? Are they teens that already frequent, or do you get the attention from teens who don't normally go to the library?
I started answering the chat, and then the slide, I had to change the slide, and I got distracted. But yeah, so I think, Regina, and you'll probably have something to say on this too, but I think it's a mix of both. You know, you have the kids that come in, but again, like this girl who I hope comes back to do the June AMA, I see her like once in a while. She's not here all the time, but when she's here, we have really meaningful conversations. So you have those kids that come in and are really interested, but even they are not the most reliable attendees. And then you also have, like, even with my current events cafe, some of those kids like literally never came to the library, but their teacher gave them an extra credit form and said, hey, go talk with this lady at the library and you can get some extra credit. So it's definitely a mix. And I don't like, I mean, that's the question we always ask, whether it's on Teen Services Underground or whatever Facebook group you're a part of, is like, how do you get the teens in? And unfortunately, there's no like one size fits all answer. It's kind of like, I mean, I try to hit like as many targets as I can. You know, when the kids are here, I'm talking to them to try to figure out what they want. I talk to the teachers, I send it out on text messages, Facebook, Twitter, send e-newsletters, you know, they kind of just hit everything and hopefully something will happen. But again, like, keep in mind, a lot of these programs are zeros all the way down until the one day that a couple kids show up. So I think it's more about like figuring out what you're like, tackling both communities, I guess, the ones that are already here and the ones that you want to bring in to the library. I hope that answers some of the question.
Yeah, and it works for me. I feel like I saw someone else mention the bring a friend. That works too. I try to get the ones who do come to bring someone with them for the next meeting, or I ask them if there are people at their school who are interested in the same kind of project that we're working on, and if they want to come out to it. I take information about the service club to all of my outreach visits. I make sure that I give it to parents. So I get a varied mix between middle school and high schoolers, and I try to make sure that even if they come in with a parent, I emphasize to the young person, this is your club. Because sometimes when they come in with a parent, it overshadows the fact that it's their thing, because the parent's going, you need service hours, we're going to the library. And so I try to make sure that when I talk to them, I tell them, bring a friend with you. This is really going to be fun. You're going to be able to tell me what you're interested in. I'm not going to give you an assigned service thing to do. And usually me pitching that part gets me more teens to come, because they're so used to being told what they should be interested in. And that this year, not so much, but
did you just freeze, Regina? So there's another question about budget, and I just wanted to say this was one thing that happened in our presentation in Pittsburgh, was that most of these programs are like zero budget. Like Current Events Cafe requires me to read the headlines. That's it. If I like wanted to offer some cocoa or chips or whatever, like that's it. I think all of these programs that we've had, that Regina and I have really been like zero budget programs. Like we're not, like we do have budgets for stuff, I mean, but none of these things really require any of it. So that was actually our whole motivation for this presentation, was we wanted something that's adaptable, whether you're a small library or a huge library, and like that does not depend on a lot of your time, because I mean, we don't have the time to be the experts on current events, but you have the time to kind of just scroll through and know what's happening and be able to facilitate instead of being the expert. And then the same thing with budget. Like you can use a budget and like augment the program, but you don't need it.
Yeah, at the most, my budget is the pizza that I give to them, or sidewalk chalk, or, you know, the $10 domain for them to have a temporary website for what they're pushing. It's very, very minimal, minimal budget on all of these things, which leads me into the teens as trainers. So these are 3 projects that came about where teens were able to take on project manager roles, which I tell them looks really good on a resume, because you can say to a potential employer that you were in charge of making sure that this event happened. So one of the big things was our prom dress giveaway. We partnered with another area library who collected all the gowns, and the service club was responsible for, once the gowns were given to us, sorting the dresses, putting the dresses in the garment bags, hanging them up, decorating the space. And on the day of the event, we had service club members serve as, they did a manicure bar, they were personal shoppers, they did checkout, like this picture in the bottom right corner. One of our members was doing checkout where he would collect the school that they were from so that we would see how many people were coming to the event. This top middle picture is the manicure bar. And I think it's awesome about these pictures is that these are kids who, when they're at the library outside of service club, may not hang out together, but having a shared interest in what they're working on, it transcends school, it transcends, you know, cliques, it goes across all of that. And they find themselves having a really great time, even if at first they're a little apprehensive. They had different departments, so someone was in charge of shoes, and it made them feel great to be able to see people leave with a dress, or to see the little notes that the girls were leaving that was saying, thank you so much. I wasn't sure how I'd be able to afford a prom dress. And that was a really successful program for us 2 years in a row. That service club completely ran. We did have a partnership with a local sorority that came in, but the teens were in charge of that event. Another project that we did for a couple of years is Hope for the Breast. So we had one teen whose mom was, she was just getting through cancer treatment for breast cancer. And so the group decided to do a breast cancer awareness event. And really all it was to encourage people, to give people information about it. We had a giant breast cancer ribbon that we encouraged people to come in and sign. The teens researched cancer fighting foods. So they've had like dark chocolate and orange juice and all these different things that they found that have been listed as cancer fighting foods. And they had a slideshow that went. And the really sweet thing about it was the teen whose mom had just been struggling with cancer. She came and she was like, this was an amazing activity. And we had more adults come to that program than anybody. And then a not very successful program, because I try to show when things don't work too, is we do have, the service club now wants to do a community panel. They would like to have, after things last year with Black Lives Matter and things like that, they want to have a community action panel where teens can talk to police officers and other stakeholders in the community. And while it's a great idea, it's another one of those things where I've been trying to impact them that you have to come back, we have to talk it through, we have to get it to take off. But what I love about the idea was that the teens came to me. It wasn't a service club meeting, it wasn't the school year hadn't started, and she knew, I have this idea that I want to do, I know where to go to get it done. And I thought, it worked. Even if we haven't done the panel yet, I've impacted the teens enough that they know that if there's something that they want to do in their community and they need an adult to help them facilitate it, they know to come to me. So even though it hasn't happened yet, I still count it as a success.
So another one of my sort of teen-driven programs was intercultural meetups. I forget what the origin story of this one was. Maybe it wasn't teen driven, maybe it was community driven. So there's this organization called AFS and their intercultural exchanges, which I didn't know you could do a like that a country exchange was a thing that actually happened outside of like teen movies. So it was really surprising to me that there were kids that we sent abroad and that they came to live here. And so we had a presentation from this community organization, and the bottom left picture is the girls that are on exchange here. And they sort of gave a little talk about like, you know, what school is like in their countries and what their surprises were coming here and all of this. And that bottom right picture is how many kids we had show up to this presentation. Because again, a teacher offered extra credit and we got like an entire Spanish class from one of the high schools to show up to this presentation. I don't know that I would call that a success, however, because what ended up happening was that a lot of kids in the back were just not interested. They were just there to get their extra credit hours. And not actually, you know, ask any meaningful questions for any of our teens that were giving the presentation. So we tried to sort of change that format, again, be a little bit more flexible. And so the picture in the top right is what was the result of when we switched to sort of an intercultural meetup style rather than the presentation. And so the idea was that you know, anybody can come in, and we kind of opened it up to high school and college students to sort of give a little bit more of an option for what we should do. And then we just talked about, you know, differences between different cultures, different foods, and things like this. And that worked out really nicely the first like couple of times. And then again, it sort of died. So I'm trying to revive it this summer to see if that'll kind of work out again. But it might be something that was really timely at a certain, you know, time in this cycle or whatever. And now that some of the kids have graduated, maybe that interest is no longer there. So sort of playing off of what the kids wanted out of this conversation. And another way I might tweak it is I just had the teen who's interested in doing the LGBT AMA had said, well, why don't we open this up to just be conversations from people of all different kinds of backgrounds and not emphasizing culture, but just a sort of like an open conversation. So that's a one way that it might be able to be tweaked, but we'll have to kind of figure out how that would work. So I don't know if Regina has disappeared here. She might be having some technical difficulties.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of see if I can maybe skip over her slide.
Yeah, I think do that and then
come back in if she. If
she's back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah.
If we get her back, we'll come back to these social service partnerships, and I'll talk a little bit about my How to Adult programs. So this is one of my favorite flyers, but I think Patrick from SpongeBob may be losing some of his appeal with my teens. So this program kind of started as actually was pushed by one of our youth services librarians who does a lot of hiring of high school students for page positions, when he said, please, if you ever do anything about how to get a job, I will help you, because I just had an application under special skills listed basketball video games. And so he wanted to help teens figure out how to write an application and how not to put basketball video games as your special skills. So welcome back, Regina. I skipped your slides.
No idea what.
Back to them in a second.
No, that's fine.
And so it started as a sort of how to adult life after high school. And I brought in our youth services librarian to talk about getting a job. We had a person from this organization called CARE Chicago that is lawyers that offer pro bono presentations on credit card health, I guess, and just any other kind of like financial decision making. So we had a representative from them, and then also somebody from our residence life at our local college to come in and sort of give some tips for living on your own. So that kind of evolved into a series of different programs. And so one of them, a community member wanted to come in and do a drop-in and just sort of offer himself as like a recent grad to talk to high school students about what life after high school will look like and what they could kind of expect and things like that. And then I added a new component with a very edgy name of Don't Go to College to talk about alternatives to college, like vocational, trade school, military, apprenticeships, AmeriCorps, what have you. So that one is actually coming up next week. So I can't tell you how that one will go, but hopefully it'll go really well. So I'll kind of backtrack now to Regina's programs. All right, Regina.
Sorry, I have no idea. The internet totally kicked me out. So social service partnerships. One of the other really cool things about with other social organizations where they can
Regina, you're freezing.
Oh, no.
No, you guys can't hear her, right?
No, I can't hear her.
No, so maybe I'll send her a chat and then maybe just keep going, Isabel.
All right, I'll keep going. I'm not sure what we have after it, but let's see.
Okay.
No, that's kind of it. So, I mean, we could kind of open up the floor, and maybe if Regina can get unfrozen,
Right.
she can jump back in. But at this point, we kind of wanted to just open it up to everybody else. So I don't know what the best way to facilitate this, Linda, would be, but just, I mean, if you have any questions or if you have any ideas, and we can kind of just give our 2 cents and see what we can come up with.
Right, so we have a couple of ways to do, I mean, we'll do them with a couple of different options for how people participate. So feel free to unmic yourself if you would like. I mean, unmic yourself, to unmute yourself, right, unmute yourself, and you can ask the question out loud, or type in your questions that you have, or, you know, we've also had it where people just type stuff and just get a conversation going with you responding, Isabel and Regina, if she gets back. So, you know, what are you guys are thinking? I'm in the middle of typing something to Diane, so I'm going to say it out loud.
Okay.
Because Diane, oh yay, Regina's back.
Regina, are you back?
I'm here. I hope I don't freeze again. I'm sorry.
So do you guys want to go back to that slide and then?
No, we can do questions. That's fine.
So I'll just say that because Diane said she has trouble getting the teams to come to college career stuff. Yeah. And I was saying one of the things in the text I was writing, and maybe you two can expand on this, is that with the YALSA project we're working on now about college career readiness, we found that doing college career stuff doesn't work. But doing like video games or something and then tying that into college career is, so it's not so, because I hate the idea that we trick them to come, but you know, like it's about their interests, and then you can connect that to those interests, right, Regina and Isabel? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I know what I've sort of tried to do is, like you said, a lot of the schools already offer some of this stuff. So I'm trying to find out what the schools don't offer and see where we can kind of fill that gap. So one of the things that's pretty well attended is we do a monthly practice SAT test. I mean, the attendance varies from month to month, but this is something that parents are really willing to push their teens to do. Like, I mean, I've had some as young as like freshmen and sophomores coming in to do practice SAT tests because it's free. You don't have to pay for it. And like you drop your kid off and they do it. And then you feel, I don't know, like you're a better parent, I guess, or something. But that's been something that's really popular because at our schools, at least, they have like some sort of prep, but you don't get to take the full test until the day you take the full test. So this has been really good in our community for a lot of our kids. I'm hoping that this new one that I started, the Don't Go to College, is also sort of filling a gap because I think it's something that, at least at our schools, it seems to be very college heavy. You know, when you walk down the hallway outside the counseling office, it's just a list of all of the colleges and which kids have been accepted at all the colleges. So, but that's not realistic because honestly, I would say probably half of our graduating classes end up at the community college and doing some sort of vocational training, which I feel like they don't really talk about because it's it's not the like glamorous thing. Everyone's talking about college readiness. And so I'm hoping that we'll get a good turnout. I honestly have no idea. That's what I tell my presenters. I'm like, it might just be us. I'm sorry, but we'll see. As long as they're good sports about it, I think it'll be okay. But yeah, I think that's the most important thing, is figuring out where that gap is and then trying to fill it.
Yeah, and I've been doing, well, I'm starting What's It Like to Be series. We did Almost Adults here, where we did how to manage your checkbook, those kind of things, because I had teens who were a lot older and they felt like what they were learning in the classroom didn't apply to what they were actually dealing with. I had teens who were basically the other adult in their house and they had bills to pay and they were like, this isn't what my classes are talking about. And that was pretty successful because it was something that they had specifically told me that they wanted to do and they identified the gap themselves. And then the What's It Like to Be series is going to be bringing in people from different creative careers, out-of-box careers, vocational careers, so they can show them specifically, this is what it's like to do my job. This is how I decided to do it. This is how I became a professional creative or a chef, or all of these different careers that are not necessarily college specific. And I feel like that has a much more that has a much bigger appeal, because like Isabel said, a lot of my teens that graduated the past 2 years, they haven't gone away to college. I had a couple who decided to travel and do service. I had a couple who decided to go into the military, and I had a couple who decided to go straight into working and attend a community college. So for me, the college ready things I wasn't getting anybody. Like my ACT prep, I was getting like 2 people. So it was really just trying to see what they wanted to do and focusing all of my programming around that.
Yeah, and there was a question earlier that was talking about like where to go to find the teens and everything. It was way back, but I mean, I think one of the things too is like getting out of the library. I mean, whenever you can. I know I spend a lot of time going to the high schools, and like whenever they invite me, I'm like, I'm there. I don't care what the event is. I'll show up with whatever you need me to bring. And I'll sit in parent-teacher conferences, even if I don't talk to anybody, even just being that presence. I mean, I do have the advantage of having wild hair colors most of the time, so I'm fairly noticeable. But I mean, it's still making that presence in the community and being there. And I think being willing to like jump on anything. One of the things that we talked about at the presentation was that like I've sort of like slowly over the years gotten the reputation of like, hey, go talk to that lady at the library, she'll partner with you, just by being open to all of these things. So, you know, our bookstore said, hey, I'm basically bought a membership for the Harry Potter Alliance, but I don't know what to do with it. You seem like you would do something with it. How can we work together? And like, what, I don't know if this is a good reputation to have or not, but you know, that's something that now people like, whereas I used to have to work really hard to like try to get into the schools and like get them to let me come in. Now they're sort of coming to me and saying, hey, we know you have cool stuff. Can you come in and bring your cool stuff and tell our kids about it? So, I mean, it is a work in progress. I mean, this has been like 5-6 years work.
Right.
Place, and it's sort of slow, but like you will get there.
And also using your teen alumni. I have a few teens who have aged out of our teen services, but they still come downstairs because they feel more comfortable down here. And what I've been doing is using them as, you know, I've been asking them to have like times where they come into the teen room and talk about what's it like to be in the job that you're in now. Or I've had teens who've told me they want to go to a specific school, and I'll have someone that I know who goes to that school who's already, you know, kind of aged out of our library, come and talk about, okay, here's what it's like at Northwestern. Here's what the cafeteria is like. Here's what the dorms, the things that they really want to know, as opposed to what they usually get in the college tour conversation. And then I had a moment a couple weeks ago where one of our former teens came back and he saw me sitting at a table with one of our newer teens. And he literally sat down and told this other kid who he had never met, get to know her. She's your girl. Like sat down and told him like, you want to make friends with her because she makes it happen for you. And it was like, I couldn't show them that, you know, you're a teen librarian, you can't show all that emotion. But inside I was like, oh, he really, this is valuable to him. And he's like so impacted by it that he wants the other teens to know, you should really get to know Miss Regina, because if there's something that you want to do, she'll do it. And that word of mouth goes a very long way. I get teens who their younger siblings come to me because their older siblings used to do programs with me, and they know if there's an idea that they have. And it's to the point sometimes where they just start throwing program ideas at me at random times. I've had a team, we just redid the floor in our teen space, and I had a team that came in and was like, this looks great. So Miss Regina, we should do yoga because, and she just started rattling off all these ideas. So I would definitely say listening to them and building a relationship with them, you start finding connections that you didn't even know. I started finding out that a lot of our teens were doing poetry in Chicago. They were going to, there's this big poetry event called Louder Than a Bomb, and I had no idea that they were going to it, but because they have identified me as someone they can just talk casually to about what's going on in their lives, it opened up a whole other area of seeing who I can reach out to, who to partner with, what organizations I need to see if I can get them to come in and impact the rest of my team. So building that connection is huge.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate in that I have an enclosed teen room that we try to staff as much as possible. And I mean, just from the way my programs and services have been like changing, I'm finding much more that I'm interacting with the teens just in the time that I spend on this desk in this room. So I try to put myself in this room as much as I can, and having that sort of like, I don't know, like write it down on a piece of paper and go to your director and be like, this is like, these are all the kids that I talked to just this week. And here's what we talked about. Like, I need to be in this room and I need the support of other staff members in this room. I mean, that doesn't work for everybody in every library, but definitely having that documentation. Like, I have the kids sign in my teen room, and I don't care what they write down. Half of the time they make up names and they don't like help me at all. But we have a list of like how many kids have been in the room at what time and like on what days. So we can say, this is how many kids we had come through the teen room. And like, we talk to all of them, at least when they come in, to say, hey, like, what's up? What's going on today? And like, that's kind of opening the door for more like better programs and services, because you're seeing who's here and like what they need. I mean, that's not the only thing. Like, you still need to go out and find the kids that aren't coming here. But I find that it's like literally different kids every time that come into the room. There's a handful of regulars, but they're from all over, and they're one-off kids all the time and everything. And I think that's documenting that is really important as well.
Yeah, I found out this week that one of the kids told me that the kids from a neighboring community, they all go to the same high school, and he talked about how you can hear them at the end of the day going, I'm going to Forest Park. And they have a community library. So the word of mouth from the teens and building that relationship with them is huge. And to piggyback off of what Isabel was saying about taking because I do that too. I list how many teens I have in our teen space, what they're doing sometimes, if they're in here using the computers, if they're in here reading, because I think it's important for people to know what our teens are doing so that when we want to advocate for them, we have something to back us up. And I wanted to note that especially right now, because what's impactful to them is so big, it's important to be comfortable being their advocate, which seems like a no-brainer as a teen services librarian, but some people are still very uncomfortable with that. And so being able to advocate for them includes being able and willing to have the conversations that say, yes, I understand that this program that they would like to do may, bring about whatever, but this is what they want to do. And it doesn't have to be a confrontational situation. It can be the teens feel strongly about addressing refugee and immigrant issues. This is what they want to do. What are your concerns? And being able to have that conversation with your manager or have that conversation with your director is huge, because in building that relationship with teenagers, we have to prove that we will go to bat for the things that they want to do, or they won't tell us anymore what they felt strongly about. And I tell people all the time, with adults, when you talk to them, sometimes it's more about how you say things. With teens, it's what you say. They're listening to specifically what you said. So if you tell them, come and tell me what's important to you and I'll help you make it happen, and you don't do that, or at least tell them, this is the steps that I took, and maybe it won't happen, but I did my part, that is huge to them. Even if nothing comes of it, they still know that you were willing to fight for what was important to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was amazing. Other questions? We've got about 4 minutes. Other questions, things people are thinking? If anybody's typing, the one thing I'll say is that idea, when you were talking about the relationships, which absolutely, like, that is key. But the other thing that does, that I'm not sure I heard, but it could be that I just didn't hear it, is that it builds trust, right? So they now trust each of you to, and what you were just saying, Regina, you didn't say trust, but but that whole idea is if you say this, you have to follow up on it. That's part of that trust, right? So all of this is about working with teams to build the relationship so they trust you and they know they can say, hey, Miss Regina, we should do this or whatever. And it's like the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right now I have a much younger teen demographic than I'm used to. I have a lot younger teens. Our teen room and teen services go from 12 to 18. And I'm used to having 17 and 18-year-olds in all of my stuff because that's just the group that was coming. And this year I've got a lot more of the younger ones and the middle schoolers, and they don't have as much autonomy. And so what I've learned that it's important to build that trust with them also because they have never had the experience to be independent before. They don't know how to speak up for this is what I want to do. And where I had a group previously where I could say, so what are you guys interested in? And they're rattling things off. This group, they're kind of waiting for me to tell them. And it's shocking to them when I tell them, this isn't my idea. What is important to you? Because in some of their lives, they've never had that opportunity before. So building the trust, even with the middle schoolers and younger, I try to interact with our tween services here, and we are going to be working on collaborating their junior allies program that they're going to be doing with our teen service club so that they can kind of age into it. And that'll kind of help me have some more teens in it too. But I think it's huge for them to see, oh, she does this with the teens so that when they become my teens, they too know that I will help them do what's important to them, and they'll learn how to advocate for. This is what I want to see happen, not just in the library, but in my world. How can you help me make this?
No.
Just at the very end.
No, Regina. Oh, wait, she's sort of, oh, are you there? Yeah, you just froze for a second.
Am I here?
You're here.
We can hear you.
Did I freeze?
No, you're here. Oh, you're gone. Oh, okay. You're here. So, well, we are just about out of time. Any last words, Isabel and Regina? We got a minute or so.
No, I mean, I think the important thing is to keep the conversation going. And actually, we do have, we'll pull this up at the very end. I mean, cool. This is our contact information. You can definitely reach out to us on Twitter, where I'm sure you can find our email addresses too and shoot us an email. We're always happy to have this conversation and keep it going. And I love crowdsourcing all of my ideas too. So thanks everyone for hanging out with us for an hour.
Thanks everybody for signing up. It was really cool to see how many people really thought that this was a great idea. And I appreciate everybody for taking time out of your day to talk to us about this. As you can see, we get really passionate about this. So it's really cool to see other people be as inspired about it as we are. So thanks everybody.
So if you guys send me your slides, I'll send that out along with everything else. And then next month, our webinar is on restorative justice with actually another Illinois person. This was not on purpose, but Shauna Anderson from Skokie, who has been doing work with restorative justice, is going to be speaking. So I think that'll be a nice tie into this, actually, and you can sign up for that on the YALSA website. I now know, because I didn't get to go to your program symposium, I know now exactly what people were talking about and why those evaluations were so awesome. So thank you both, Isabella and Regina.